Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mindful Play Summit. I'm your host, Crystal Jensen, and today we're sitting down with Priyanka Handa. She is the founder and director of Learn to Play. Priyanka is a social entrepreneur on a mission to transform how the world sees, cares for, educates, and protects young children. She does this through consulting, program innovation, and community initiatives, which encourages collaboration and responsibility, focusing on the most sustainable and scalable methods of early childhood care and education. Thank you so much for watching. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Today, we're sitting down with Priyanka Handaram. I'm super excited to come on and speak with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm so excited to be here as well. And thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the line of work with Learn to Play?
So I am born and raised in Botswana, which is a beautiful country, landlocked in the middle of South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Zambia. And I absolutely love the field of early childhood education. I am so passionate about the formative years of a child's life and what we do in a child's first 3 to 5 years and what an impact that makes for the rest of their life, not only on their kind of academic success, but also on their well-being, on their life skills, on their relationships that they will form, and just their holistic development. So I am a mom of 2 children. They are nearly 7 and 4. And when I was pregnant with my second child, I really started thinking about the access that my children have and why, for some reason, that was such a privilege in my country, and it wasn't a right. And that actually jarred me a little bit. As I traveled around the country, I started to see the massive disparity in quality early childhood education that children had access to in Botswana. And so that inspired me both in my professional work as an educator, but also as a mom, that this should not be a luxury. Early childhood education should be every child's right. And so that's where Learn to Play was formed, where it was the idea of how do we take quality early childhood education, which seemed to be a very niche luxury product, and take it to scale and have it widely and freely available across the country. And so Learn to Play provides free early childhood play groups across Botswana by training mothers in communities to be the agents of change and deliver these play groups to children in their communities.
Wow. So inspiring. That is
Oh, thank
beautiful.
you.
And I can hear your passion. I can hear your joy. So curious to know from your perspective, what is mindful play and why it is so important?
So mindful play, I mean, if you think about children playing, really often children are so in the present moment very naturally. They can be crying about a broken toy 1 minute and the very next minute they've forgotten about it and they're in the next thing, and they're 100% involved. They are using all their senses. They know what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're feeling. You can almost taste the fun and smell it as well. So, I think when children are playing, they're activating all their senses. And I think sometimes as adults, we lose that. We grow out of a mindful state of playfulness. So for me, mindful play is bringing back that state of completely being present and engaged between both the adult and the child. And it's a process, so it's not about the play outcome. It's not about the fact that we built this wonderful tower out of Lego blocks, but it's about the process that both the adult and child engaged in, where they were both 100% present, where the child was leading, was in a state of being relaxed, was in control, and the child has a sense of agency. And that agency is what brings about the mindfulness, because they're so in control. It's their choice. They're not being led, which is quite passive, but they're leading, which is an active state of being present. And so that for me is mindful play. So mindful play could be as simple as a Play-Doh activity. It could be a child-led nature walk. It could be some fantasy role play. But in essence, it's a process by which the child is the agent, the child is leading, and the adult is 100% present, following the child and engaged, and more about the process than about the outcome.
I absolutely love that. And I love how you explain. So it could be very simple things. A lot of the time I'm finding and I'm hearing that parents or educators are feeling that by adding on additional thing, it's an additional thing. But by expanding on the awareness that this could be integrated into whatever we're doing, if it be,
Yes.
a beautiful mindful walk or playing with Play-Doh, and just shifting the way that the parent or educator is integrating with the child. And what you're saying is letting that child lead with it and kind of
Yes.
layering a couple, I would say, seasonings or spices into the experience to bring in that more mindful approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the simpler, the better. In fact, the more complicated it is, the less mindful it's going to be because you're thinking too hard about the steps or the ingredients for play, if you'd like. So, if the simpler the tools, the simpler the resources, the simpler the process, the more likely you are to be able to engage more of yourself because you're not having to think through very much. And I think that's the idea, is it's bringing back that simplicity and taking away all the complexity of early childhood education that we seem to have brought in, in schools, at home, and in different ways.
Absolutely. I feel like that expectation that we put on the deliverable or the end result, right? It's like, okay, so
Yes.
today we're going to make an owl. And here's how you make the owl versus, hey, today let's explore and here's some loose
Yeah.
parts. Like there's a difference there, right?
100%, because you're so focused on the product that you're not able to be mindful of the process.
Absolutely.
And so, mindful play is process led play, without worrying at all about what the outcome is going to be. And it really needs both the adult and the child to be fully present to allow for that. And I think, when you ask about, why, what is it and why do it? I think the benefits of it are, tenfold, because it's about the holistic development of the child. It's about their well-being, and the outcomes, if you really do want to measure the outcomes in the long run, the outcomes are going to be far greater because you've got this child that is confident. They can self-regulate, they can make their own decisions and choices. They have explored, like I said, on multiple different senses or different levels. They have come up with their own processes, so their creativity or problem solving that's come out of it. So the potential of developmental outcomes, if we really have to talk about them, is never ending in a way when you think about mindful play. Whereas when you limit it, when it's outcome based, like we're making that owl, there are only 3 or 4 very specific outcomes that you're going to get and measure through that.
Absolutely. I completely resonates. Bringing in a personal story, when I took my early childhood education about 17 years ago, we were brought into the room and we weren't allowed to speak. And half the room got to go to one table where it was like a very controlled activity. And the other group got to go and explore. And it was like loose parts and feathers and just like a beautiful table. Well, I sat at the very controlled table and I felt my body just very saddened. I didn't want to take part because it was like I had to do things a certain way. And the instructor wasn't sharing with us what the experience was to be. And then the next day she switched us around and I was like partying at my
Brilliant.
table and I was feeling all the feels and I was observing the energy of the other table, how I felt the last day. And then we came together on the third day and we all sat there and we discussed our experiences. And by putting us as the educator and the student through the experience, I will never forget that story.
Yeah,
I will never
I
forget
love
that
it.
experience, right? Of that.
I'm going
And
to use that.
feeling,
So
right?
we do professional development at our schools every term, and our new term starts next week, and we've got our professional development schedule for this Friday. So I'm actually going to use that this Friday. Thank you, because I
You're
think
very
it's
welcome.
so brilliant. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will never forget that experience because I felt it and I embodied it. And then I will remember, okay, so I don't want to put a child through that because the
Through that.
tampers on the creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've now recognized that for the outcome, right? Or if it's, preschool orientated and the parents are coming in with pressure and there's deliverables and whatever's happening, it's okay. Let's talk about the journey and the process of how we got to this beautiful. And these are the
Yes.
stories that, and we just evolved on this beautiful piece. But I wanted to share that personal experience because it resonates and I will definitely never forget going through that and now recognizing. And I think that's a really big pivotal point. So what you're saying is you're bringing the parent through these workshops, you're bringing those Pro D days so that they can feel that they can then
Mm-hmm.
embody it to teach. And I totally appreciate and respect that.
Oh, thank you. No, and thank you for sharing, because I think it really demonstrated exactly what I was trying to say is, and it's about, again, the well-being of the child. And you're saying that you were sad or you were excited. And what brings that stress is because you're having to meet a particular outcome. So you're stressed before you've even started that I've got to meet a certain goal versus I don't have a goal, I can explore. And in the world that we're living in, especially with the pandemic and the amount of stress and anxiety that children are already going through, the last thing you want to do is put more of that on with them having to perform in a certain expectation or to meet certain objectives that are preempted for them. And that's, again, a beauty of mindful play is you're saying let go of those expectations, let go of those outcomes, and relax into your play. And the benefits are not only for the child, I think the benefits are for the parent and the educator, because the best way to relax is through play. I think even as a mom, I am happiest the days I've really mindfully played with my children. And I think as an educator in the classroom, you will learn so much more about children's developmental stages if you have followed them and you've seen where they are and met them at their level. You'll be able to cater your lesson plans and your assessments and reports that you do still have to write and meet, in any educational system. But if you have allowed for at least a few opportunities for mindful play within your school day or school curriculum.
Absolutely. I love that. So we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about your children's picture book, A Tiger's Tale and Mindfulness for Children. Can you just let us know a little bit about that book and from your perspective, why stories are so important?
Oh my goodness, I could talk for hours.
I know your smile, you can tell it just
mindfulness.
lights you up.
It does. Well, okay, I'll start with about A Tiger's Tale and what inspired me then I'll go on a little bit more generally to stories. But A Tiger's Tale is inspired by my trip to Bhutan. And I think, just sharing a personal story again there is I was turning 30 and my husband asked me, what do you want for your 30th birthday? And in a very kind of like, crazy, not exciting answer, I said, oh, I just want to be happy. And he made a joke and he goes, well, let's go to the happiest country in the world then. And I woke up, I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's go to the happiest country in the world, which happens to be Bhutan, because, I don't know if you know this, but Bhutan doesn't measure their GDP. They measure their gross national happiness. That's their index for development. And it is just so lovely. So we literally planned this holiday to Bhutan for my 30th birthday. And just, we went for fun. And my daughter, I only had one child then, and she was just one. And so we planned this whole trip, trekking up the Himalayas and mountains with our 1-year-old in tow. And we had the most fantastic trip. And while we were there, we were speaking to so many people as we traveled to see, and we visited early childhood centers there, and we visited monasteries for young children. And the more and more people we spoke to, I just wanted to get a sense of, is it just a marketing, like tourism strategy of Bhutan, or do people really experience and feel this sense of contentment and happiness and bliss that they talk about? And it really was. Every person, from the youngest child that we spoke to the oldest nuns and monks in monasteries, spoke about how this is their life. Their life is about happiness. They don't measure wealth in any other way, and their family values, their dinner table conversations, their school curriculum is about nature, it's about mindfulness, it's about connecting with people, it's about community. And those were the things that brought in that value of deep contentment. And while we were there, we got to witness the most amazing thing. It was the king's birthday or some occasion, and the king and queen of Bhutan themselves came and were planting 108,000 trees in this area, because they believe so much in conservation and reforestation, and how what one country does will have a global impact on the world's oxygen levels and climate change. And that moment of witnessing these trees being planted, that's what inspired the storybook. And though in the book we don't mention the specific country, I love sharing about what got it started. And the book in theory is just based in Southeast Asia. So, no mention is made of which country it is, but it's the idea and the values behind it. And I think that's more important. So A Tiger's Tale is about a little monk and a tiger that comes to plead to this monk and finds this little monk in his monastery and pleads the case for tigers who are losing their home and losing their habitat, and how the tiger finds a solution for loss of habitat and deforestation through mindfulness. And so, it's a little child, it's a little monk child, and he can't think for himself what to do. So he meditates on it. And it's all about going to those values of, if you listen to yourself and if you go deep within, all the answers are within you. You don't need to ask grown-ups necessarily for advice, because actually here in the story, the grown-ups are the ones that are causing the deforestation. So actually, if you go back to your true self, you will hear these whispers of truth. And so that's little monk's journey, and how he goes through this process of inner reflection, and he hears this answer of what he should do to help tigers find their home again, and plant those 108,000 trees. But also it's about showing that he doesn't have to be the hero on his own. And I think that's really important for children as well. Also with mindfulness, and we're talking about stress and anxiety, often a lot of children's books talk about this one hero, and it's this one person that has to go out into the world and save the day. And that can be really overwhelming for young children, to think that it's all on me to do this and save the world, when we talk about really big world problems that we're going through. And so with A Tiger's Tale, though he goes within himself to find the answer that he finds is, I can rely on others. I'm going to campaign. I'm going to tell my teachers. I'm going to tell my parents. I'm going to tell my friends about this. And together they form this global community that make this change. And so it's bringing back those values of community, of being a part of something, of not having to do it all myself, but we are there for each other and we're stronger together. And so it's those kinds of values that come out of mindfulness again, and being a part of community that the story is all about.
Such a beautiful story. And, hearing you speak and our previous conversation before hitting the record button, all about community and collaboration, it's such a beautiful
Yes.
tie into that. I absolutely love that. I have yet to, I've seen your book, but I've yet to purchase it. So I'm going to go and purchase that as well, so that I can embody that within my classroom. So thank you for that piece of it, because it sounds like you've taken that story, that inspiration, and, been able to produce. I'm thinking in my back of my mind, like, how long did it take that king and queen and their people to plant 108,000 trees? And what a beautiful
amazing
thing to just keep creating amongst the world. So when we talk about stories and integrating stories into, if it's at home with our children or in our classrooms, from your perspective, why are stories so important?
I think stories give us a way of both empathizing, but also abstracting what we're going through. And I think, there's no other resource or tool in the world that does that, where you can feel 100% immersed, but also a little bit of separation when you need to. And I think especially for children, sometimes children find it really hard to say, I feel this way, or I'm going through this. So you'll often find with children, when they're playing with their dolls or their toys, they'll say, my teddy feels that mommy never plays with me, or mommy's always on her phone, mommy's gone to work. And it's the teddy feels that way. It's not I feel that way. And so when you tell stories, you can abstract it, and children do that. They tell a story about something, but you can often find a lot of truth of what they may be feeling or thinking through that story. Even with their fantasy play and their role play, you'll often find them say, you be the mummy, I'll be the child, or I'll be the mummy, you be the child. And you'll see that what they kind of depict is something that is going through their mind, and it's a way of reflecting what they've been thinking about or experiencing or processing. And that's their storytelling. But when they read a story, often they can empathize and they can feel and they can understand that actually when this happens, and it could be good or bad, it could be starting school for the first time and you've got a story about being brave and showing courage, but it could also be for difficult situations like the death of a pet, and reading a story about loss and understanding it when you don't want to talk about it like what if my pet died, or when my pet did die, but actually saying, in the story when Jack's pet died, or when Jack lost his teddy bear. And so you can abstract and empathize at the same time. That again allows for the child to be present, process their emotions, have the words and the language and the vocabulary to express what they or the character might be feeling, and understand that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to each emotion, to each kind of plot line or scenario, or what's going on in that story, and seeing a way through it. So I think stories are such a powerful tool for that. But when I think even in COVID, when we've had to go into remote teaching, and we're teaching 2, 3, 4-year-olds, remotely, one of the most powerful ways that we found to engage with children remotely is through stories. So if you've got a 2 or 3-year-old on the other side of a camera and you're trying to teach something to them, I don't know if you've had to do this, but it is so difficult because their attention span is all over the place. They've got so many distractions around them, and actually you don't necessarily want them on a screen all day either. But if you've got 15 or 20 minutes where you can engage through a story, and then use the story as a prompt for other learning activities through the day, so that could be their language, their maths, their science experiment, a dance activity, a gross motor obstacle course based on a story. There's so much that the story then allows for. And because stories are so engaging and personal in a way, it allows for a deeper connection, even in a time where learning has gone remote and we're not as close and connected. And again, I just can't think of any other tool in the school or earlier setting that is as powerful as stories for that kind of empathy creation, human connection, and bringing in the mindfulness of being completely present and wanting to understand what happened next and what did the character feel and what about this, and especially picture books, because it's visual, it's auditory, it's sensory. There's so much going on there that even over a Zoom call, if you're reading out a picture book to the child, you're saying, look at this, and there's a visual prompt as well as what the child hears, and then they can go and do an activity using their hands based on that storybook.
Amazing. I could just sit here and listen to you talk all day. I love your energy. I would love to take part in one of your workshops to be able to embody that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you've put together a resource for our listeners, and everything that we're mentioning here will be down below on your speaker page with your interview. So could you talk a little bit about that resource and what our listeners can expect when they get that download?
Awesome, thank you. So the resource that you can freely download is called the Rainbow Play Approach. The Rainbow Play Approach was developed by myself and a colleague of mine for Learn to Play. And as I've explained, with Learn to Play, we're working in mothers across Botswana who then implement this play framework called the Rainbow Play Approach in their communities. And the idea was to give the mamas, we call them mamas, in a tool to understand 6 key areas of early childhood development. And so at Learn to Play, we've defined 6 core, equally important areas for development. And I think this is really important to stress, because in a lot of other early childhood curricula or frameworks that we've seen, we see maybe 4, maximum 5 areas of development, but not something as concrete as what we've tried to create with the Rainbow Play framework, where we've got social and emotional development, language and communication, gross motor, fine motor, creativity, and cognitive development as our 6 areas. Now, those words can be very technical. I mean, for you and I as educators or parents, you may have come across this in your reading, but for our mothers out in communities in Botswana, this was jargon that they didn't necessarily need to know. So we color coded it into these 6 colors of the rainbow, and so that parents across the country would understand, okay, there's red, there's orange, there's green, and if I'm working with my child on a daily or weekly basis, I should try and cover these 6 areas so that they're developing holistically. And actually, we can't club motor skills together, because gross motor and fine motor are totally different parts of the body, and the activities that you plan to help develop those skills are totally different. So we can't just put them as one, because that would be very confusing for people who are not early childhood educators, who can't differentiate between that. And we often think that creativity and imagination or social and emotional skills are byproducts of all the other play that we do, but they're not. They're their own imperative areas of development, and we've got to plan activities or practice time for those skill areas as well. So the downloadable kind of gives a lot more detail into the Rainbow Play framework, what each color stands for, the play process behind it, the outcomes, a bit of a write-up about the theory behind it, but it also links each area of development to one of the articles. Each area is linked to a different article in the UN Convention of Children's Rights. And again, the idea behind that is that children have rights of their own that are not the same as our list of human rights. They are unique to children, and that as educators and parents, we have to do everything in our power to help children meet those rights and give them opportunities to live those rights and embody them themselves. And so the Rainbow Play framework is something that you can print and put up on your fridge, and it's just a constant reminder that through this, children are meeting their rights. And so that's what you would get if you click the link that's below and download the document. And it is an open source document, so it's free for parents and educators to use. You can kind of put it to any curriculum, you can put it to your lesson planning and just think and give yourself, color code it, take some highlighters, take some pens, look through your weekly lesson plans or activity guides and think, am I doing activities in the 6 key areas? Is there something that's lacking? Am I really focused on one? And I think we do, as I love literacy-based and story activities, clearly. So when I'm teaching, by default, a lot of my work is language focused. I would highlight a lot in yellow. And it's a great reminder to me to do the things that I'm not as comfortable to do, because the children in my care, in my classroom or at home, deserve to practice all those 6 areas, not just the ones that I enjoy or I'm good at.
I really love how you touch point on how to integrate it into your everyday lesson plan, right? Because it's adding that awareness piece, and educators, we love to color, right? So it's like when
Yes,
you're highlighting and it's more
that's
visual
it.
and you're like, wow, my lesson plan this week is all green, right? Because
Yeah.
that awareness of observation, I think is a huge point that you're making out, where sometimes we just keep moving and flowing because we're moving and flowing, but to take a moment to reflect. So that's a beautiful, beautiful resource. Thank you.
It is, and it gives you instant feedback. It's like you can instantly look at something and see where you're at and where your kids are at. But also, it's another mindful practice, because you're bringing in that reflection. You're focused on what you're doing, the process of it, not just the outcome, and you're tweaking it as you go. And there will be times where you will want to have a focus on the green, and you'll want to say, what, I can see that my children they really need extra practice with their fine motor skills, so I'm going to deliberately plan a lot more orange this week, because they need that opportunity and they need that extra practice. And that's fine, as long as you're aware that you're doing it and why you're doing it. And so it's just bringing back that awareness, that mindfulness into your lesson planning or your parent activities at home.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that resource with us. Now, before we wrap up, if there was one thing that you wanted to tie into a bow to share with our guests that are listening today, what would that be? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I know you can handle it.
Thanks. I would say don't be overwhelmed by the concept of playing mindfully. You know, if you want to do it, just start. Don't overthink it. You know, it's going back to that same point that we had at the beginning. Simplify it, and that's the point of mindfulness. I think it's to be able to come into the state of the present moment, to be relaxed about it. You know, don't worry about the doubts or questions or concerns. Am I doing it right? You probably are. The less you think about it, the more you're probably doing it, you know, right? And so I would say that if you want to give it a go with the most simple resource that you have, just you and your child. You don't even need a toy with you. You don't need any other distraction. Take a walk, see what you notice, play with your walk. You know, if you can be, you know, have a camera. So make a camera with your hands. And as you and your child are taking a walk, see what you notice and you want to take pictures of. Close your eyes and click that screen and then talk about it. Close your eyes and see, what did you take a picture of? What do you remember seeing? Was it the green leaves? Was it the signs of spring? Was it autumn and the leaves changing? You know, did you see a ladybug there? I saw a ladybug. Did you see that bird just fly past? And that's bringing mindfulness in. So it's the most simple of things that you can just start, and you can start right now, because all you need is you and your child.
Beautifully said. I'm so happy and grateful that we connected. I love your energy. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We've got Priyanka Handa from Learn to Play. It's been a pleasure, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much, Crystal, and thank you everybody for signing in.
Thank you.